Good evening again. I'd like to call the committee of the whole for the Village of Cary for Tuesday, May 1st, 2018 to order with roll call, please.
Kostler? Here. McAlpine?
Here.
Kraus? Here. Betts?
Here.
Weinhammer?
Here.
Cavelli?
Here.
Thank you. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now move to the public comments section of the evening. I had nobody sign in. Is there anybody here who'd like to address the committee of the whole?
Do you need my name and address? Brian. A couple of things. First of all, you guys were talking about signage, and I just, at the last meeting, and I've lived in Cary for 19 years, and I never knew where Decker ended and Montana started. And now there's signs up there, and I really appreciate it. So that was kind of cool when I saw those pop up. And then second of all, that occurred to me sitting there when you guys were talking about approving that last warrant and did not approve it. Just wondering roughly, how much is the village going to accrue in legal fees now that you have refused to pay a legal fee to another law firm for services that were rendered, and they are going to probably follow up legally with the village, and I just wonder how much the village will accrue in legal fees. And you really don't have to answer that. It's more of a
Rhetorical question.
And that's all I have.
Thank you. Topics at hand is a discussion on the lake and park facility use policy. Eric's going to handle this for us.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Village Board. This evening, ahead of the village taking ownership of the former Meyer Materials Lafarge mine over Route 31 and Clausen, I wanted to bring before you a discussion item on some parameters for a park use ordinance, so that once the property is open to the public, that we ensure that we have certain requirements and regulations in place for the safe enjoyment of all residents and the public for the property. So what I'll present to you are just a summary of some of the highlights of the ordinance that we will bring to you at a future village board meeting for consideration. And we definitely want your feedback on the different parameters that we're suggesting here. Just an overview of the property itself. I'm sure everyone's well aware. Located just west of the Fox Trail subdivision. It's approximately 102 acre site. The opening day condition as part of the requirements that Meyer Lafarge had to implement in place for us before we take control are the lake itself, which you see is about 77 acres. There's a 2.5 mile circular trail, a 15-foot wide gravel trail around the lake itself. A parking lot, paved asphalt parking lot, has 60 parking spaces with access off Clausen Road, is over on the southeast corner of the site. Additionally, they improved per our plans and permits, additional trails that loop off the main circular route and give you access to the designated fishing areas closer to the water on both the northwest and east side of the lake, and a little peninsula as well on the south. And then finally, the Park District will be constructing a future trail connection to this facility from the north through Hoffman Park. Just a couple images from a recent site visit about a week or so ago of the property. So it's the current condition. It's still in process, but you can see a lot of the grading has been completed. A lot of the shore areas have been seeded and stabilized, and the trails are starting to be cut in. Another view from the west side of the lake looking east. And the area they're working at up in the northeast corner currently where they're working right now. So some of the major facility use regulations we're proposing. First of all, date of operation. We're suggesting that the facility be open to the public April 1st through October 31st, and that we would close it for the winter months just due to operational savings, so that we don't have to plow and maintain the trails for safety in the parking lot and so forth, as well as the limited uses and that we would likely want to maintain from a safety perspective. A lot of steep slopes out there and unmonitored areas. Hours of operation, we recommend matching what Hoffman Park and the Cary Park District has in their facility, which abuts ours. So that would be dawn to dusk that the facility would be open to the public. We're suggesting, as far as the parameters for people that want to have picnics out on site, that there's no bonfires allowed on the facility and no use of outside grills being brought in, with the exception of some that will be built in and provided as one of the amenities on site. No smoking, alcohol use, glass bottles being brought in, no camping or hunting, standard no littering and no dumping, and as well as no overnight parking. This is just the view of the current access point that was cut in by the contractor at Clausen. And another view from the trail near the parking lot looking west. On the trails itself, we're suggesting a few parameters. First, we would recommend that bicycles be allowed to be on the trails themselves. They're hard compacted gravel that will be well suited to all types of bicycles. And at 15 feet wide, we feel it's definitely something that's big enough to be shared by both pedestrians, runners, and cyclists. That also does match the Park District's allowable uses on their trail system to the north. We suggest no unauthorized motorized vehicles, and our ordinance will include a whole list of what motorized vehicles means, but specifically cars, trucks, all-terrain vehicles, snowmobiles, and so forth. We're suggesting that pets be permitted if kept on leashes at all times. Again, kind of consistent with what is allowed already in Hoffman Park, and we do have a very excellent Park District dog park just to the north of the site as well. And then lastly, we're suggesting no horseback riding on the facility, just to keep it with the users that we're intending. That might be one added dynamic that we maybe don't want to consider here, but that's up for discussion. That fell off the screen. That's okay. This is a cross section of the trail from the approved plans. And then this is one of the trail sections that's in the process of being constructed. You can see there's a lot of swales that are being built into the trails themselves to prevent erosion from drainage. They've cut the sub base in and they have not put the gravel in quite yet. The lake itself, we're suggesting no fishing or, I'm sorry, no swimming or wading in the lake, as we don't have a traditional beach property and the proper grades and so forth. We do want to allow fishing, specifically in designated areas, and with the fishing requirements, we're kind of matching the parameters that are occurring in a lot of other publicly owned facilities like this, which would include catch and release only, no live bait, and the standard requirements for fishing licenses, and no ice fishing, with the facility being closed in the wintertime and for safety, and no outside boats.
I have a question. So how come there was no grading for swimming access? Is that something that wasn't able to do, or Meyer didn't want to do it, or?
It wasn't part of our original agreement, and it honestly, it's not something that's really easy to accomplish. That would require a significant amount of underwater earth movement, which is not something that that they're in the process of doing very much of, and honestly, it would have been something that we would have probably had to have done early on in the process. The Department of Public Health and other regulating bodies for public swimming areas do require certain slopes that have to occur, so you can't have a very steep drop off into the water. So and my experience from having done that at in Crystal Lake, the costs and the grading involved in creating those swimming areas is very substantial. It is definitely not a minor activity.
Eric, you said no outside boats at all?
Correct. Mainly because, one, we don't have a boat launch in place and constructed, at least in the current condition. It could be something allowable maybe down the road. And secondly, being a pretty pristine body of water with excellent clarity, that's something I think we want to definitely have eyes on to maintain and preserve for the future. And invasive species, particularly zebra mussels, are something that can hop a ride on the bottoms of other outside watercraft or in the intakes of motors, and could change the dynamics of the water in the future. Not to say that we wouldn't allow it, but it's something that we should be thinking of if and when we do make that change.
But that would apply to, say, a kayak I can sling over my shoulder as well?
Yes.
Certainly, there are things that we can change here over the years. This is essentially to get us open, and we can revisit this on an annual basis or as-needed basis.
Right, can I add one point? When you're regulating water as well, that becomes much more involved. If you had to try to save somebody on the water, you need a mechanism to do that, which could happen, whether it's a kayak or a motorized watercraft. And then if somebody's violating some of your regulations on the water, again, you need a mechanism for getting to the person on the water, which means you probably have to have a boat. The village does, so. Yeah.
Does the fire department have any of that equipment?
I'm going to rely on my past experience as well. And if you would need someone out there to regulate navigation, it's a non-navigable body of water. And then the other part of this equation is, are we going to look at licenses? Are we going to do those type of things as well? So at this point, you're right, they do, the Fire Protection District does have boats that they can use in regards to, rescue. But by reducing the ability for people to use the waterway in that fashion, you reduce the risk as well. I did ask when we were talking about this, though, if the fire department would have the ability to train out there, and the answer to that question was yes. So.
So for opening day with our current configuration, this is what we're proposing, but as Administrator Rife said, that as we move forward with the property, and if other facilities or amenities are added and other needs are met, there's definitely things that we consider adding to the future and getting people one fun one for the future. Just as an example, with the fishing on the bottom of the lake. The two types of fishing accesses that we're proposing, trying to implement early on this year would be two ways. First would be a roll-in or floating pier. There's some inexpensive models that at least get people not far out into the water, but up onto the edge of the water where you can definitely be conducive to fishing itself. We're proposing a couple of those on that southern peninsula and a couple more throughout the other sections of the lake. Then the other way would be to put in some small gravel paths that lead from the main trail down to the water's edge in areas where the grades are conducive to that and where it's safe to do that. Just given how steep the slopes are through most of the property, there's only very certain areas that we would suggest that. And that's why you'll see those little fish symbols in very specific places on the map. And that's just where the grades are relatively flat. On the right, there are a couple example photos. That's Lake County Forest Preserve facility, Independence Grove. It's also a former gravel pit quarry turned public park. They have a couple of the piers that I had mentioned and referenced, and then just one small example of the stone outcroppings that give people a kind of a stable place to stand and fish when you're up near the water edge. So in summary, we're trying to match a lot of these park facility regulations similar to the adjacent Hoffman Park.
Just from dawn to dusk, April 1 through October 31st.
Portable grills, smoking or alcohol use, camping, hunting, overnight parking. And on the trail use side, allowing
No motorized vehicles and pets on leashes. And lake use, at least at this time,
no swimming, no outside watercraft, and very specific fishing requirements, designated areas only, and catch and release. Any feedback from the board you'd like to share?
I think it's a good start. Where could a resident get information on this? Online? Are we going to print out flyers?
We will definitely do the usual, if not a little expanded public outreach. So once it's approved by the village board, we'll definitely do a website. There'll be a separate web page on the website dedicated to it, outlining the parameters. We'll do a press release. And also, more importantly, once the facility's in place, some of the dollars that were budgeted for site equipment in this current fiscal year, now it's May 1st, include signage that will post these regulations so that when you're on site at the park itself, it's clear that these regulations are there.
We'll plan to bring back the policy here to the village board at our next meeting. Once we get that approved, we'll complete the outreach.
I'm wondering where we're at as far as working with other taxing bodies to maybe assume control of managing this land, since it doesn't really fall under our privy.
Yeah, that's on the work plan here for this year. I think once the village takes control of the property, as long as the board is comfortable with it, I'll be reaching out to the Park District and the Conservation District. I've already had initial discussions with the Park District on this matter and plan to explore it further with them once we have the property in our possession.
And then real quickly, I mentioned some of the items that were budgeted in the current fiscal year. You'll be seeing these brought before for consideration as we start ordering materials in preparation for having control of the property. Very basic things in the works for this year to start. Things like benches, the grills that I mentioned, picnic tables, places to put the hot coals, swing gates for closing off the parking lot and the trailhead during the winter months when it's not open, receptacles for pet waste, stuff like that. Just some more examples from Three Oaks Recreation Area in Crystal Lake and Independence Grove in Libertyville. Oops, wrong way. Other things, entry signs. We don't have the specific models in place or design in place, but we'll likely mirror signage that's being introduced throughout the rest of town. Kiosks themselves, just to highlight the maps, the regulations, the requirements of the facility so that they're there on site for the users. And wayfinding signage on the trails themselves to point people to where those fishing areas are and where the picnic areas are. Again, similar examples from those other facilities. And with that, I can entertain any other questions.
I have one question. Are we thinking of putting porta potties in there?
That is one thing we are looking at right now. There are some options out there that are relatively easy to implement with regards to not having to put in power and plumbing and so forth. But with that, obviously, there's a maintenance aspect to it that we definitely have to consider. So when we bring forward the items for approval for the equipment purchases, we'll bring that one up as well for discussion.
Eric, what kind of total dollar amount are we looking at for some of these improvements in equipment?
Preliminarily, the current budget from the Land Conservancy Fund had a little over $66,000 in place. And some of that is also for materials for like the gravel and so forth for the fishing access. But the items
specifically like the benches and tables and stuff.
Yep. Right now, my initial total, I'm about 10 to 12,000 under budget with my estimates right now for all those items.
Wait, so what's the number? I'm confused.
66.
Okay. I personally, I think that maybe we should look at recovering some of the cost from the $300,000 that the Park District is getting for the pathway extension, if this is going to be, given to the Park District. To use village funds to improve it and then give all that to the Park District is sort of a double blow, in my opinion. So maybe we could talk to the Park District about that and some sort of trade-off.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I just have a question. Do we have an anticipated date when this will open?
The property comes into our possession in June, I believe, sometime in June. There will be some time for the closing and all the documentation. And then obviously we're going to need some time to get some of the, at least the very basic things in place, like the regulatory signage, the gates. Not all these minor amenities and equipment need to be in place, but there are some very basic ones that have to be in place before we open it up to the public. So we'll need some time to make sure that that stuff is, when it's purchased and delivered, and then has time for it to be installed.
We don't have an exact date yet.
Do you think it'll be this year or?
Yes.
Next year?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say this year for sure.
Yep.
Any other questions for Eric on this?
Looks great.
Thank you.
It's a great start. Jeff will say.
Thank you, Eric. Now moving on, discussion on a donation for entryway signage. Just to give a little bit of a background, I was approached by a couple who have lived in the village of Cary for 20-some years, 25 years or so. And they are in the position now where they would like to give back to the village of Cary. And they have set up a couple of meetings with me. They wanted to know what was going on. They were aware of our new train station. They were aware of our comprehensive plan. They were aware of potential downtown improvements. They were aware of potential entryway improvements as well. So we sat down, we went through everything that was going on, not just this stuff, but all the new development. They wanted to know everything that was going on. So we went through all the new development that's happening in the village. We went through all the new stores and restaurants and that. So we kind of went through a litany of things from the village standpoint and where we are. And at that point, they had said that they would like to try to help out with some of these and that they had needed some more time to think about things. And so they had asked me for more information, which we provided them about some of the downtown stuff, signage. They wanted some more clarifications on our comprehensive plan. So as soon as I found this out, I notified the board that this was a potential donation to the village, and it would be in an anonymous form. And they were pretty emphatic about that because how they got this way was they sold a business, and they are now in the positions where they want to be philanthropists. And they would like the integrity of their mission to remain intact, and they don't want to call attention to themselves. So they had, we went through all the different things, and they had kind of focused on how they could do it. You know, I had no idea at this time what their funding source was or how much they were going to be donating. And I had gotten permission from the donor because he had made an official donation letter to the village. So I told him I would just read this. This might clarify some of the things. So bear with me, please. This was, I received this on April 18th, or actually it was dated April 18th. I received it on April 26th. Dear Mayor, my wife and I had several conversations with you regarding our wishes to make an anonymous donation to the village of Cary. As we shared with you in our meetings, we recently sold our business and would like to give back to our community, which continues to be an important part of our family's lives. In our meetings, you shared the village's vision on improving the community. We were impressed with the plan and the amount of time and thought that went into it. We are lucky to have a mayor and a board that is truly invested in the future of Cary. We are interested in providing $60,000 for the entryway sign replacement project. We understand that some of the sign upgrades are being handled by use of TIF and Meyer material funding. We would like to have a donation put towards the signage that is not covered with other funding. We do ask that our donation remain anonymous, as my wife and I prefer to keep our philanthropy as private as possible. This is important to us. We hope that you and the board understand these wishes. We are not requesting or expecting any favorable treatment personally, politically, or in any current future business venture with the village of Cary. We are simply in a financial position to help and wish to provide this funding for the betterment of the very special community in which we live. Enclosed, please find a cashier's check for $60,000. Thank you and good luck with all the elements of this improvement project. Best regards, anonymous donors. So that's where we were, and I've been inundated with some concerns about the sources of this. And I'm trying to, this is something that the village did not seek out. I did not seek out. They came to me. We have never had a situation like this. We have never had a donation, especially of this size. So, moving forward, we may want to consider a policy with regards to this so that people feel comfortable with how this goes. So I wanted to talk about this up front with everybody so everybody has an understanding what this is. This is an unbelievable opportunity for the village to help us with something that has been budgeted for, planned for, and designed for. And I think this is a really good opportunity for us to take advantage of a very generous resident of the village of Cary. So I will be more than happy to answer any of the questions that I can at this time.
I personally think it's a great thing. $60,000, that's a lot of money. If it's a cashier's check, you know that it's correct, it's solid. We are in we have a police pension fund that we need to pay, and we don't have the money. We have a tight budget. I think it's a great thing that, let's use that money for what they have allocated. I think it's awesome.
Well, I would like to piggyback on that. I would too agree that someone being that generous, to have a generous benefactor is it's a little bit, or keeps you a little bit speechless, like, wow, that someone would do that for our community and that our community means that much to them. As village trustees, I think that what we're tasked with is making sure that this donor is vetted properly so that we don't get in a situation where we could have a potential conflict of interest or something that looks improper or anything like that. So I would pose to Jake and actually to Scott, is there a way for perhaps you as our village attorney to get involved and vet this? Again, I please understand when I say this, I'm not saying that this is not 100% above board. We want to make sure it's not money come from drug trafficking. Not that I think it is or anything like that, but we're tasked with making sure where this really comes from. And I 100% respect, I don't need to know who the donor is, nor do I want to, but I want to make sure if I'm going to say okay to accepting this, that we've done our due diligence to protect the village from something ever coming back later on saying, hey, this came from a source that's looking for a favor or something like that. So I don't know if there's a way that somehow you can get involved or a way that we can do it that you know of, that someone else has handled a situation like this to really protect the village, that we're able to accept this and for every one of us to feel comfortable with that.
Well, I would like for us to get involved as a board. I understand the person wants to remain anonymous, and I can respect that. Personally, finding out that information, I have no intent whatsoever to disclose that information. My concern is just, I agree, I think it's a very generous donation, but where I'm coming from is, without knowing, I don't feel comfortable attaching my name to something where if it does come back to personally hurt me and my integrity, that means everything to me. And not that I don't know this person. So that is my concern. But as a board, if we know, I can assure you the utmost confidence that I have no intention whatsoever to disclose who this person is. I just need to know for my own personal, for my own person, that this is somebody who is vetted, that I have met and I've done my due diligence on it and researched it, because I'm not willing to risk my career or something like this, or I don't want to put the village in a bad position over something like this. Without having that information and just rubber stamping it with my name, that is not me doing my due diligence as a trustee. So.
Any other comments?
I agree with what Kim said, but I guess Attorney Euler, you could clarify. I mean, when I look at this, if you really want to be an anonymous donor, usually what would happen is there would be some sort of trust formed, and there would be a power of attorney to distribute those funds as a donation, so that it would be truly anonymous. And it's a shame that that didn't happen in this case. It's a very generous donation, and I would love to accept it, but I do have concerns, like Trustee Cavelli has said. So, has this happened in the past where you've been involved and have people use trust or some similar instrument to maintain their anonymity?
Well, I guess you're right. As a practical matter, if they had done it that way,
Right.
they would have taken care of their own issue. It's not required. You can donate money other than the State Ethics Act, which you're bound by locally as well. There are provisions related to gifts that are made or donations that are made to public entities from prohibited contexts, like vendors, somebody seeking to do business with a public body. So if the information is available to the board, so the board knows who this is and is otherwise kept anonymous, that shouldn't be an issue.
We have met this past week to discuss this, and I said the exact same things as Trustee McAlpine, Kostler, and Cavelli. So
Yeah, but we also indicated that you thought that this might be pay for play.
I indicated I had
Couple
lots of
times.
questions, so
Well, I
I don't even know why
understand
you
that.
bring that up.
Well,
but-
because I want to make sure that we're transparent about this. This is something that is, if somebody is doing out of the goodness of their heart, they're in a position that they're able to do this. They are philanthropists throughout McHenry County. They've told me that they have made substantial donations to various organizations, and it's always been anonymous, and people take their gifts anonymously. There's no strings attached. They're not looking for anything whatsoever. They provided a cashier's check, so the funds are there. They just want to be able to provide something to the village that was so good to them while they raised their 3 kids here. Their kids went through all of our schools, and they just want to give back. And, I think, part of it, dealing with non-for-profits, I know with just talking with people at church, there's a lot of people that make anonymous donations there. I mean, that's notoriety to themselves. They want to be able to, preserve their lives. And because I can imagine in talking with some of the priests in the past about large donations, and part of it is because they don't want people coming out of the woodwork saying, you know what, I need this, or I have that, and I have an organization. They want to be able to choose what they feel is best for their philanthropy efforts.
I mean, it's not truly anonymous when you're the only one who knows who this is.
Well, again, this is the first time this has happened, and they came to me because I'm the mayor, and I have knowledge about what's going on. They asked specifically about, they had already known about these things, and they wanted me to go through this with them. So at some point, somebody from the village has got to steer the ship when it comes to doing this, because, I agree that, perhaps maybe it should have come through an attorney anonymously, but how would they have obtained the information about what they wanted to do without talking to somebody within the village that has intricate knowledge of what is going on and what projects are pending, what new businesses are coming, and how it is going to relate to their efforts. So, I give them a lot of credit for doing this. I contacted the donor this week, and I talked about it. I said, I'm coming up with some kickback with regards to the anonymity, and he said that he would be willing to work he would be willing to meet with one other trustee that had their concerns. And I reached out because I had been in conversations via text with Trustee Cavelli, and I find her to be very realistic, and I thought, well, maybe I'll ask her if she was willing to meet. And she agreed that she would be willing to meet. Threw it out to the potential donor, and he said, yeah, he'll put together a meeting one day next week and get some of these questions answered. It's just, I find it very hard, and I understand where some of you are coming from, but I find it very hard that we're turning down, or we're looking negatively at an opportunity for us to better our village at an outside cost that we can't afford to do right now. So,
Mark, or Mayor, I don't think that anyone's looking at this negatively. I think people are just looking at it cautiously, and that's all. Because you're right, this is an anomaly. When does this ever happen? You're saying this is
it'll probably never happen again.
So I think people are just trying to do their due diligence. I don't think they're being negative about it. I think they're just making sure we're protected. To what you said to Trustee Weinhammer, I remember you having conversations with me before about just meeting with other mayors and just some of the stuff other mayors have experienced about some of the pay-to-play stuff. And I'm guessing that's why you maybe had asked some situations like that. I don't think it was directed, directly toward you or negativity. I think it was just, hey, here's some things that other mayors have encountered. Could this potentially be the situation? So I think people are just being protective, making sure that, we're vetting the process properly. I do think it's just important for all of us to know, rather than just a select few of us to know. And I would just say that if you could talk to this person and see if everyone can have that same opportunity. I don't think it's only fair that you and I know that information. I think it's fair that all of them know the information.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but how do we get them into a place where we can all meet about this? We can't have
and maybe it doesn't require a meeting with everyone, I'd just be happy to know a little bit about the person if the person doesn't want to meet with me, just so I can just check, do some Google searching, just check out to see who this person is so that I know. So if the person doesn't want to meet personally, I'm fine with that. Just if I have some background information, I can do some checking, I would be okay with that. But I just think it's fair that, that all the trustees have that.
I agree. If you know, I want to know as an elected official. And as you said to me when we met that morning, we should be ecstatic about this. We should be jumping up and down. Yet the way it's been handled puts us all in this mood of, well, mistrust, what's really going on here?
How has this been handled? As soon as I got the notification that there was a pending donation, I notified the board, and I notified them that they wanted this anonymous. That's all. And I kept you apprised of the situation, and I couldn't act on this until I got a letter. As soon as I got the letter, I notified everybody that same day. As soon as I got this letter, I notified everybody. I did what I was supposed to do. I was protecting of for 25 years who wants to be a philanthropist. And they're what they had wanted. So I don't understand why I did something wrong. Why is this my fault?
Do you have something to say? You're staring me down.
Excuse me, wait, hold on. If you have something to say, can you come up to the microphone, please?
Cassie Pinter, 325 Bryan Drive. I'm looking at you, Jeff, because I don't understand. You seem angry about this. You are acting as if somebody's keeping secrets from you for some.
Okay, this isn't productive. I appreciate your concern.
This is the
Please.
leadership
I wanted
that
to
we've been
address this
dealing with,
question.
though. Cassie, there's two sides to every story, okay?
What's the other side to this, Jeff?
There have been multiple instances where you refuse to work with this board as a board. Simple things, the seating chart. You don't want to do the seating chart.
Oh my gosh.
I can pull up some things.
Go ahead.
I just feel like I have a hard time believing, and you're right, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Thank you very much. I really, it's a great thing.
Honor their wishes, not blame who it is.
Yeah.
But I just feel that as elected officials, we should be privy to this information and we can work
for us to
together.
have later, Jeff, okay? We can air the.
There are wants and there are needs in this village, and
I mean, is there something we can all do as like sign a confidentiality agreement?
Yeah, I have to bring this information back to this donor. I'm not acting on any authority.
I'm not looking for this information to disclose this information publicly. That's not my intent whatsoever. And I'm sure that would be no one on the board's intent. But if there's something that we can resolve this and make this a happy board where everyone has the information, we graciously accept this generous donation. I'd like to see us get
discussion item. We wanted to get the mayor wanted to get some feedback from elected officials. We've got some feedback from elected officials. We can go back and circle back here with Attorney Euler and see if there's any other options where we can meet the desires of the village board.
Can I say something? David Miller, 65 Highway 14. It's just really hard to keep something anonymous. And the more people know, the harder it is to keep it anonymous. And that I could see the problem with someone wanting to give money and figure out where it's coming from and everything else. But the more people know who it is, they're going to be known what's going on. And it's going to defeat the whole purpose with why they're trying to do it. Just a thought.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session to go over closed session meeting minutes, 122C21, litigation pending or imminent, 122C11, and setting sale price of village property, 122C6.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.